talk us through a little bit like that move from Santa Cruz onto Cannondale.
Yeah. I mean, I'll rewind back quite far with this because it is quite a big subject, but for me personally, and it plays into a lot of the stuff we've just talked about, but my relationship was always with Rob Roscott, very personally, and through PE sort of held my hand getting into that situation, and I actually never even spoke to Rob before my first contract came through, but I'd had an offer. I'd had an offer going into my second year junior from Pete, a Polish fella who ran my team. Blenky was on back then. Anyway, that's beside the point. And Pete was like, "We've got you this. Stay with us. You don't want to ride for anything else," sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which interestingly became very much a theme. And Rob took me in like I was his own Roscott. I used to go and stay with Laper and my kids, and for 3 or 4 weeks in winter when the weather got terrible over here, I'd fly out to California and I'd train from their house. And I was part of their family, and it was beautiful. And they were so accepting, just generous and lovely. And on a personal level, I felt so much generosity from them. But there was always a very sudden transfer into business mode with Rob when it came to contract time. And, successful businessman, understandable. But I feel like that theme sort of ran for a very long time, and whenever it was contract time, I'd get an offer here, or I'd be speaking to someone else, and I'd go to Rob and I'd be like, "Well, actually, Rob, I know you've offered me $30,000, but in my head I had like 45 as like my thing, and I've been speaking to this other company, and he'd be like, "Well, you're not going to go and ride for them, are you? So take your 30, and that's that." I always be like, okay. And it was and then we'd go out into San Fran the next day, and he'd be spending tens of thousands on paintings and this and that, and it was all these little power plays which were quite prominent for me as a young man. It was quite like, it's just kind of tricky to navigate in a sense.
And you were pretty young at this point, right?
Yeah. And as it went on, there was always we did have a great thing going, don't get me wrong, like the team was fantastic. My PE to me, like, he is, there's definitely been times in my career where we've sort of been butting heads, and the older I get, the more I realise how much I've just wound him up so much with my behaviour. And like, I totally get it, having taken my waves around for a few years, and just like lack of organisation and
Yeah.
So yes, but I'm really, really going on with myself here. But after I stepped away from racing, World Cup, and sort of muddled my way into whatever was next, I didn't have a plan. I often don't. I'm not one of them people who sort of forecasts and makes long-term goals. Really, if I'm passionate about something, I'll put my head down and I'll work towards it. But when I don't have a plan, I just let life unfold and see where I end up, and trust that it'll work out one way or another. And I was very, very much in one of them situations, and the management was coming down on me fairly heavily, like, "Well, what are you going to be doing?" I still had another year left of my contract to race World Cup for the best money I'd ever been on. Looking at it now, it's pittance compared to what the top boys will be getting, but for me it was a huge thing, and I could have just kept my mouth shut and gone for another year and done a world tour and rolled down the hill and enjoyed myself. But that didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to do that. It wasn't what I was invested in emotionally and physically. So anyway, I ended up getting like 70% whatever slashed off my contract.
Yeah.
And then I worked harder than ever for the next few years. I worked so hard because I was like, wow, is that all I'm worth? Like, it just proper hit me in the like, wow, my self-worth was so low.
Yeah.
Because that's all they wanted to pay me. And I was like, I was flipping World Cup champion 2 years ago. And now I'm an ambassador for this brand and we can't, it was like, it was gnarly. And that hurt me and stayed with me. And the first year off, I grafted really, really hard, and they're like, oh yeah, we see what you're doing in a few years, you'll be back to some decent thing or whatever. So I'm like, right, okay, not now, but in a few years, sound. And then Nick got in touch, and and after I stopped racing, I didn't really, Rob was devastated I'd stopped racing, understandably. Petey was devastated I'd stopped racing. A lot of people, they saw so much more potential in my career. So I didn't have as much to do with them because they didn't want to speak to me because they didn't agree with what my decisions. And, the relationship with Rob especially broke down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then when Nick Lawson, I've known Nick for quite a few years before this point, when he got hold of his position at Cannondale and I started seeing the brand and what he was doing with Max, and I was like, yeah, he's selling it to me. Like, I want to be part of that movement. He's bringing this brand up,
yeah,
and I want to be on that train because I'm just enjoying this different take on it. So then I started chatting to Nick, and Nick was like, the product isn't ready. I wanted to talk to you, but not yet. And I was like, mate, I want to come.
I want in, yeah.
I want in, and I want to bring these boys with me. And behind the scenes, I'd already been trying to get Dave a ride on Santa Cruz, Sam Hockenall.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we've not got space currently for any new riders. And I was like, oh, man. And Nick was like, I really want you to bring some young talent up with you. So I was like, amazing. It just felt like it slotted into place perfectly. So made the jump. I'd told Rob, I'd been having emails back and forth with Joe Graney, and Joe had been sort of saying to me, if you want to be eco and sustainable and all this, there's no way you can be riding for that company. And had sort of gone in on a bit of a personal attack at Cannondale as well as me. And I was like, Mint, well, that's just signed it for me. Like, if we can't even like chat on, if we're pointing fingers here, I'm out, I'm gone. And I didn't actually speak to Rob because he hadn't spoke to me for months on end. So I was like, if we've not got an open line of communication, that's that, I'm doing it. And in hindsight, I should have had more communication, but Rob was really hurt by me just leaving without saying anything. But I'd been really hurt by other things in my past. So it was just like this unfolding, that was just how it went down. And it just gave me a new lease of life. I look back often on 2019 and what we achieved that year was, man, we were in Europe twice, 3 times on like 6-week trips in the Sprinter van with 4 of us. We were in America doing road trips, did 2 American missions. Like, the content we created, the events we hit, and we all did that on one bike. We had the aluminium Habit. Yeah. We rode probably 10,000 miles on them things down. We rode so much. I don't know how much we rode, maybe a couple of thousand. We rode so much on them bikes. And it was a year I'll never, ever forget. And it really reinvigorated me just to like, when I left Santa Cruz and when I left World Cup and race EWS, we were creating content and doing EWS on the side and trans races, and they were, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Like, I loved it. But just not even think about a clock and just ride my bike with younger lads who were just frothing for it. Like, that was a special year. It really was. Yeah,
it was good to see, man. You could see something was happening for you, like the life was coming back into you, like the Josh that we all know and love was coming back onto our screens and websites and all that stuff. It was good to see.